Remember, the incident happened back in 2023. We all remember that day, I think, if you were here. I think we had coverage all day long of that. I don't think most people could even believe that it had happened. A man crashing a bus into a daycare, killing 2, injuring 6 kids. Well, the latest on this story is Pierre Saint-Amand has been named a high-risk offender. This court ruling just coming down. We wanted to get a breakdown of this to try to understand what it means. Eric Sutton is a criminal defense attorney here. Eric, thank you for coming on the air. Look, I have a couple of questions here. Number one, first of all, maybe your reaction to this ruling by the judge. What did you think?
Well, I'm not really surprised, given the criteria that needs to be met to be declared a high-risk offender. There are two roadmaps to that finding. One is that there's a substantial likelihood that the accused will commit a violent crime and endanger public safety if he were to be released, or both, in fact, or a finding that the crime itself was so brutal that it would be disconcerting for the public if there wasn't such a finding. They look then more at the facts of the event as opposed to the profile of the accused. But in either way, the judge could quite easily have come to that conclusion.
My other question is, this gentleman in question, Pierre Saint-Amand, has been in psychiatric care the entire time, right? It's not as if he's walking around anywhere. What does this judgment do with respect to what happens from here on in for him?
Well, it's very restrictive. It means that he cannot be released unless escorted, and only if it's for medical purposes. In other words, I don't know, if, say, a member of his family died and he wanted to attend the funeral, he would not be allowed to be released. So, in fact, he will be confined in a psychiatric facility, a secure psychiatric facility, for at least 2 years. Mm-hmm. Then there will be a review, and the only times he could be released is if he's escorted and if it's for treatment purposes.
I wonder as well, though, there's also a question here of rehabilitation. I thought that was the whole issue here to begin with, right? You're putting him under psychiatric care, the idea being that maybe at some point there is the hope for rehabilitation. Is that off the table by virtue of this?
It's not off the table, no. I mean, well, when you talk about someone who's been found criminally non-responsible, it's not really a question of rehabilitation. It's really a question of is there a substantial likelihood they could endanger the public, or is public safety at risk if the person is released? And so you look more to see how they've progressed from a standpoint of treatment. And if he accepts treatment and is responding well, there could be a review done, and the case could be returned to the court to determine if that classification could be removed as a high-risk offender. So it's not like the decision is final. It's an ongoing process, and if he's responsive to treatment and willing to accept treatment, because you can't really force it on someone, okay. And makes progress such that specialists come to the conclusion that there should be a reconsideration of the classification. It could go back to court, and the classification as a high-risk offender could be removed.
Changed, I see. I read in the piece, I'm trying to understand this, it says the judge ruled there is no risk to the public and stated that, in this case, Saint-Amand's constitutional rights as well as his right to dignity are not being violated, which, again, begs the question, pardon my ignorance here, if the judge ruled there is no risk to the public, why continue in this situation?
I have a feeling that might have been read out of context. There is no way that the judge could have concluded that he's a high-risk offender without finding that there is some risk to the public. I don't want to second guess you, but I think that might have been maybe extracted out of context.
Okay, so the other question I have, I guess, is we know families, of course, very much involved. I know they were there at the trial this time. How much consideration is given, in fact, in a case like this, to the family here who want to see, obviously, a harsher sentence to someone who killed their children?
Well, in terms of once he was declared criminally non-responsible, and that was a joint submission from both the prosecution and defense, there's really not much. I mean, the fact that the families have the right to be heard, but the decision whether he should be classified as a high-risk offender doesn't really take into account the families themselves. It's really a determination as to the nature of the crime, which obviously families lost 2 children and others were seriously injured. So there's some consideration, but the process really looks at the profile of the offender and the nature of the incident, not so much the family's opinion on the matter.
Just as a final question, so he's at the Pinnell Institute. He's going to stay there for the time being. Is the suggestion here, I want to make sure I understood what you said, it will be up to the people there who work with him, mentally, psychologically, for them to decide if and when this should go back to court and he should be allowed to continue as a normal citizen or not?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
There is still a review board that could recommend that the case go back to court to determine if the classification as a high-risk offender should be reviewed or reconsidered. It's not up to them to make that decision. It's up to the court, but they're the ones who monitor his progress, if at all. If there is no progress, then the classification will just be maintained. If they come to a different conclusion over time, they can have the case returned to court.
Last question. I lied. I said that was the last one. I'm just wondering, maybe this is kind of crazy to ask, but if that was the case and he is tried again because they say he's okay to go on trial now, could he then face a murder charge?
No, they wouldn't. There wouldn't be a fine. They're not going to reverse themselves on whether he was criminally responsible or not. That's a final finding. It's more, what will the future hold for him? Will he be declared? Will he continue to be a high-risk offender? That is what's at play at this stage. It's not the finding of criminal responsibility. Okay. He's been found non-criminally responsible, and no one's challenging that.
All right, we leave it at that. Mr. Sutton, always appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
I'm Luke Wilson. Join me each week for Film Never Lies. Since retiring from the NFL, I've had a lot on my mind, and now I've got my own show. So if you're tired of lazy takes, if you want honest conversations, join us each week. Film Never Lies, available on all TSN platforms and the iHeartRadio app.